Hey, I'm Cocquyt, and in this show, we bring you the most inspiring stories from female entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators in our ecosystem, the Guild community. And today we have Magali Mathieu with us from atlasGO. She is one of the co-founders of this incredible company and has been in the Guild for a very long time and has spoken at our events, and we've done awesome projects together. So it's a real big pleasure to have her here on the show today. So welcome, Magali, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so, Magali, tell us more about atlasGO and what it is, and also why you joined atlasGO and co-founded this company, and what inspired you to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we started atlasGO in summer 2016. We are a certified B Corp and an organization that focuses on digital community building through corporations and nonprofits. So on the corporate side, we do team building for a cause types of activities. And then on the nonprofit side, virtual races. So both of the products are virtual. So obviously we had a really great, exciting boom during the pandemic, which I'll be glad to talk about. But that's the core of what we do. And then how I got involved. So one of my co-founders, Tommy, came with the idea of atlasGO to San Francisco. We met in a Master's of Social Entrepreneurship. Originally, the idea was really focused on a fitness app that for runners that gives back. Being a runner, loving social impact and giving back, it was just an automatic kind of fit. And we started exploring in the safe space of being in a master's program in school. And then Ali joined us as well. And then the three of us decided to launch and go for it.
Wow, that's so cool. And I love the fact that you connect your passion for social responsibility with your passion for fitness and health as well. And then over the years, you probably found that connection between the corporations that want to support their employees being fit, but also connecting it to a cause. You just mentioned you have two co-founders, right? And so sometimes in the Guild, we have a lot of solo entrepreneurs who are looking for co-founders. So I'm just really excited to learn how that works for you. And if you have any tips for people how to deal with your co-founders, especially when you're the only woman in your co-founder team as well.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I often say that I'm in a marriage with these two because it's a lot of work, but in a really good way. I think that what we're really lucky is that we decided to co-create this. And so to really work hard at our relationship together. We also, at the very beginning of atlasGO, were able to be a part of the Milestone Maker program. And so, I mean, giving tools like these to entrepreneurs and having accessibility to a coach who really helped us think, okay, what are some of the things that you want to prioritize with your co-founders in terms of how the relationship is going to evolve? And so we've, from the get-go, built in these conversations that we call courageous conversations. And so it's these moments that we talk about the things that are not easy to talk about, the things that went wrong, and it started from the very, very beginning to figuring out how to set up the company, but up until now. And actually during the pandemic, we made it a weekly conversation because we were all spread out, throughout the US and the world. And so it was really helpful to have these check-ins. And then more recently, we were able to be back in person again, which was amazing, and spend a couple of days really like talking through everything. And it was a lot of emotions. But I think that it's so important because there's a lot of things that, throughout the day-to-day, you might be like, okay, this isn't that important, I'm going to not talk about it. And then you realize how much it really affects you. So that's been really good. And then on the point of being, the only woman with these two guys, I think that the amazing thing is that they're extremely open and supportive and have always said, hey, this is the perfect balance and we need to have this kind of balance. A good example of that is the very first time that I wanted to take a long holiday, a 2-week break. They were kind of like, what? We're, what is going to happen? And then they sat down and then they were like, okay, wait, no, we need to be able to build a company, of course, where people can take holiday. This was before we had employees, really early days. And so I think that we always talk about that, and I'm super passionate about health and well-being and company culture. That's really something that I've personally grown a lot into, and so they're open to it, even if sometimes it is something, you know, they might agree together on a different angle of like wanting to push and hustle and continue, when I might want to be like, hey, should we maybe take a break? But it's also really important to have three people, I think. I think we're really lucky because we're so different personalities wise, that, yeah, it helps us. It's sometimes harder to co-create because you have to like agree, right? Let your ego go and be like, hey, wait, what do we really want to create here? And do we agree? And but then I think that's also what makes us strong.
Yeah, having a team of co-founders can really accelerate you forward too, right? Because you have three people working on this great idea, not just one person. I think the fact that they are different and you are all sort of complementary to each other is really important, because what we say to our founders, don't try to find your mirror image, right? Don't try to find yourself, because it's not going to help you in building a diverse team and a company with all these skill sets. Great insights. And actually in the Guild, we also have a co-founder checklist that is available to our Guild Academy and participants. So you can go through and just, you know, have all these conversations, and conversations you might not even know you should have in the beginning when you find and you're trying to get together with a co-founder. So Magali, atlasGO, it's been a few years. What were the milestones that really defined the company and kind of made a difference from where you started?
Yeah. So I think if I think back really early on, one of the big milestones was originally we're three non-technical co-founders building a technical product. And so originally we had worked with contractors. And so our tech team, you know, early days, we didn't have money. We just didn't have the capability of having it in-house. And I think everybody warned us against it, and then we did it anyway, and then we really learned that everybody was right in this case. And so a big milestone was actually making the switch and having our tech in-house. That has changed so much. I mean, again, this was really early days, but I think it's one of the earliest milestones. I think some other big ones have been pivoting the product. So originally it was really a community-based application. And then in the early days, we had corporations tell us, hey, actually, I'd love your product, but just for my employees. And so that's where we really listened, and we changed, and we launched the employee engagement product. And then on the other side, nonprofits that were being beneficiaries were saying, hey, we really want this, but without a corporation, just for our community. And so we actually launched virtual races a year and a half before the pandemic. And it was a product that was mainly for nonprofits that were organizing events and that wanted to invite people who couldn't be there. So it was really low margins in terms of people that were participating. But that meant that by the time the pandemic hit and everybody was looking for a virtual race product, we had one that was really established. So that was a huge milestone for us when we got there. And I think in general, the pandemic has been a huge milestone. It's a little, I always feel a little strange to say that for us. It was a really, really beneficial and productive and amazing year as a company in terms of our growth, because we became from a nice to have product to really a necessity, where nonprofits were in need of this to continue their fundraising, and where corporations were in need of this to have their employees connect in this crazy time.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of businesses, right? And I mean, good for you if you're able to see that opportunity and to provide value and support during those really dark days, right? Because people wanted to get out and have that sense of community, even if we weren't able to get together in person. When you look back and you think about the lessons learned during that time and the things you just described, the milestones, how would you summarize that? Because you said, for instance, we really listened to our customers, right? And then pivoted. What were those lessons learned that you wish you had known before?
It's interesting because we're really in a moment right now where we're seeing that we have basically two different products, right? That could completely become two different companies even. And so a big lesson learned that we're still learning, I think, is focus. And I'm curious to have this conversation in 3 years and see what I would have learned of this moment right now, because when you're dealing with a product that caters to an enterprise and also caters to a nonprofit, the audiences are so different, the feature requests are so different. And so when you're looking at the product pipeline and like what to prioritize, there is difficulty in understanding, well, this is amazing for this product, this is amazing for this product. There are some features, of course, that are amazing for both. And usually, that's where it kind of goes and continues. But in terms of like where we're going long term, right now, this is a big question in terms of focus. What are some of the, like, how do you choose the focus that you want to have when you're doing a lot? And it's kind of that, like, do you want to be a Swiss Army knife, or do you want to have like more of that specific focus?
And how do you make that decision?
I could ask you the same question. The way we're looking at it is really analyzing what's going on in the past. So looking at everything that's been, working, the challenges, and then also talking to our different clients about it, understanding if maybe there is, because a lot of our nonprofits do use our product within the employee engagement. So to create employee engagement events for their corporate sponsors. And so that's still very much tied to the employee engagement aspect of things within atlasGO. And then another big thing is, how is this space going to change as things reopen? As virtual isn't going anywhere, but there are some aspects that obviously, you want hybrid events, you want to be in person. So what does that mean for that product? We're in the process of figuring it out.
I think as entrepreneurs, we always are, right? There are so many tools we can add to the Swiss Army knife. You just mentioned that you're selling to corporations, enterprises, but also nonprofit organizations, right? And none of these sales cycles are easy, right? The nonprofits probably don't have the money necessarily, and the corporations, they just pull you through all these contract negotiations and purchasing departments. I'd love to do a deep dive on that, because I think a lot of the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem have these questions too around, how do you manage that sales cycle? Are there any tips or tricks how you even get in front of them? Have you had any big successes with big companies or awesome nonprofits? And is there anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So definitely the enterprise and the nonprofit worlds, two very different worlds. Another aspect that we really learned in terms of sales cycle for us is that we used before the pandemic to really have an outbound strategy. So to be going out to reach companies and nonprofits. And then that completely switched. I literally woke up one day and thought that our website was broken because of the demand that was coming in, which, be careful what you wish for, because this was what I had always wished for. And then when it happened, you're like, I don't have the resources for this. How is this going to happen? But it was an amazing learning experience. And what it really showed is that when you have a product that is more of a nice to have, the sales cycle is way longer, right? Because there isn't an immediate necessarily need or an exact kind of time frame where, okay, these budgets will get decided, exactly at this time, and this is like when I'm going to be tackling all these organizations. So I think that in terms of outbound, which we're still doing now, it's a lot of networking, right? It's a lot of getting in front of people. It's a lot of referrals. One of the things that has really happened successfully for us now is that clients are referring us to other clients, which is really exciting. And then in terms of the sales cycle, we have gone from it used to be 6 to 12 month sales cycles to now it's, sometimes a couple weeks to a couple months sales cycles. So that's a crazy shift. And then that's really on the enterprise side. and we have had some great, companies. We're global, so we work both. Talk about focus, but we work both in Europe and the US, and that's been a great experience. And so we did an amazing challenge with Nestle Benelux in Europe. It was actually a hybrid event, so they got some of their employees to do physical events and then some virtually. In the US, we've worked with awesome companies like Viacom CBS or Henkel USA, and some of them are doing tree planting challenges. So they're basically unlocking a pledge that the company has made to plant trees. So there's an environmental focus, and some of the activities are related to that. I'm going, of course. But on the nonprofit side, in terms of the sales cycle, it's actually during the pandemic, it was insane. People were saying, hey, we need to do something in 3 days. Like, I have an event in 3 days. How can I turn it virtual? And so, sometimes it was, well, we're going to need to push back the date. There's no way we can handle that. And then for some of them, we had to just pull a quick turnaround, and it was great. But now what we're seeing is that there are really cycles, especially for nonprofits, of doing certain events, because there's time of year due to weather where you do it. And so in that way, the sales cycle is more seasonal for us.
Oh, fascinating. And so what would you say was the reason why the sales cycles became so much shorter for the corporations? Was it the need to have you, as you're saying, you became a must-have versus a nice-to-have, or was there something in your process that changed as well?
I think it was a little bit of both. One, definitely becoming a need, because companies were realizing that their employees were working more than they ever had, that they were being isolated, that they weren't connecting to each other. And so the product that we have offers a solution for that. And then on the other side, we also got to understand who our clients really were, right? Because when you say corporations, there's corporations of so many different sizes, so many different focuses. And so we got to understand a little bit better who our customer really is. And specifically on the size of the enterprise, where challenges are really, really successful. And so it's also, targeting these, or when a client that is around that size comes, hey, here's a list of clients that we have around your size. Here's what worked with their challenges. Here's what didn't. So I think also just naturally, as you grow as a company and you have more clients, you're able to provide just better insights, and the sales process becomes a little bit easier.
I'm sure it helps when you have a company that is similar to another company, and you can sort of cite them or have testimonials and references, right? Awesome stuff.
And another thing is competitors popping out. Like in the last year, we've had so many different competitors pop out. And so also understanding how they're communicating these things, like it's more and more a solution that is, out there. And so there are just certain needs and ideas that people are like easily searching for in a Google search ad, right? Sometimes keywords and things like that. So yeah, as you're also just as a product is less new, right? Or more of a necessity, then just the search and the word of mouth becomes easier to also understand.
Ah, fascinating. Yeah. And I always say, competitors are great, right? Because they validate your market, you see what they're doing. And then, of course, it also means there's market demand there. So excellent. Now, you've been at this for 5 years, right? It requires so much perseverance to be an entrepreneur and to push through all these funding rounds as well, and stay motivated and passionate and not burn out. Like, how do you take care of yourself on that journey?
Yeah, well, I definitely burned out in the pandemic. As I said, we had so many requests coming in, and nobody at that time knew how long it was going to last, right? And so my idea was, I'm just going to get as much business as I can in this moment, and not, okay, I'm going to recruit a team and train them and then get them up to speed so that while this is still happening in a year and a half, they can be helpful. And so for me, that was a big personal learning. I think that perseverance, as you say, and resilience is so important as a founder, and it's something that you continue to learn. I'm also a yoga teacher. I love meditating. I love being out in nature. We recently moved with my partner to the hills of Marin, which is just being in nature helps so much, going out and even after a tough meeting, just going out for a little walk makes you realize that, yes, that meeting was important and tough, but I don't know. For me, nature is like my church, I guess. And then, yeah, asking for help. So when I wasn't doing so good, again, this is where having co-founders is amazing. Having a team. Very often, my team was the one saying like, "Hey, go take a break. Like this is crazy." And so, yeah, really taking a break. And then that's another thing. Like encouraging a culture where taking a break is a positive thing, I think is really important. And it's something we're still working at, right? Because when you're a really small team, you have small resources. And when somebody takes a break, it, maybe adds work on somebody else. Like it's a lot to handle, but it's so important. You just come back so much more motivated, refreshed. So I think after 5 years, I'm at the stage right now where I'm like, how can I continue to make this role more sustainable for myself and for the company? Because there is some levels at which I was going in the last 5 years that I'm not going to be able to last much longer at that pace. And I think it's really, really important to be honest with yourself and to understand like where your limits are, right?
Well, thanks so much for sharing. And, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's what we need to prepare for. And I think a lot of founders think it's a sprint and then, burn out also because of that hustle mentality, especially in Silicon Valley. So I love the fact that you're consciously thinking about it. You tie it into the company culture and you're taking care of yourself on that journey. So Magali, thank you so much for joining us here today. Last question for you. How can we help you succeed as Magali and also with atlasGO?
Yeah, that's so sweet. I mean, connect with me in any way you want. You can connect with me via email. I'm magali@atlasgo.org. I love sharing also my personal journey on Instagram at Yogini on a Journey. But if you're looking for, atlasGO and if it's a platform that can help you, I'd love to chat.
If you're inspired, then subscribe to our channels on YouTube, on our social media channels at Get Gilded, and also on our platform, letsgild.com. You can also sign up to our newsletter to get news about the latest and greatest in inspiring stories from female founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators in the Guild. I'll see you next time.